We have all of our components in place. But if we make selections, nothing changes. My list of 5 colors is the same no matter which size I select. I can select different colors. Nothing happens to the shoe or to the list of sizes. So we need to make some changes so that these events that we fire in the browser actually update the state. And we're going to do that for the first time in this video. We're going to work on the size selector for now. React event handlers are added to your elements as props in camel case. So for example, if we were going to add a click event handler to each of these options, we might do it like this. They're technically synthetic events for compatibility reasons across browsers, but the coverage is good enough that you can basically assume there's an event in React for anything that you need. And they're all defined as these attributes or props on your elements. There's documentation on the React website telling you all the different supported events that are built into the library as of the current version. What we're interested in right now is the size selector. And we want to make some state changes when the select item is updated. So we're going to use the onChange event for that. And I'm going to add a handler for this. We'll call it onSizeChange. So this will just be onSizeChange. So this is a function that I need to define, which will be fired every time onChange happens. So let's define that function now, onSizeChange. And as with pretty much any event handler, we'll pass in an argument representing the event that just happened, so we can inspect it and find out what happened. And so we'll start by just logging to the console that something happened. And we'll say change event fired. And we'll pass in the event as well so we can see what it looks like. So let's switch back to the browser, open our DevTools. We'll go to the console and refresh the page. I'll clear out these errors. And now when I change the size selector, we can see here's my change event. And it's called a proxy here because it's a synthetic event, but its API is very similar to the built-in core events. And I know from reading example code from the React website how to address these synthetic events. It's basically the same as what we're used to. So in this case, it would be the target of the event and then the value, which we can get out of that select box. So let's try this one more time with this instead being logged to make sure that we're getting the right stuff. I'll refresh, change the size. There we go. Change event fired 10. Here's 12, and so forth. Now, normally we'd take the value of the item and do something with it right here. In this case, what we want to do with it is update the state, that is the currently selected size. But that size is part of state. And because of React's one-way data flow, we can't actually see it in here. We can read it as a prop, but we can't set it. Now comes one of the trickier parts about working with React, at least to me. We need the event handler to be able to update the state, so we need the callback called in this onChange event to originate in the parent instead of in the child. Then we pass that handler into the child as a prop. If your eyes are glazing over, I don't blame you, but here's how it works. We're going to go down to our product customizer where we can actually see the state and make changes to it. And now we're going to add a new prop to our size selector component. We'll call it handle size change. And we'll set it to this.handle size change. This is jumped outside the braces here, so let's put that back in there. Now we need to define this function. And remember, we're inside create React class, so this is going to be another key inside that object. So this will be a function. And the argument here is going to be a little different. For reasons we'll get into later, we're going to call this selected size. It's not going to be the event object. We want these event handling functions to be as implementation agnostic as possible. Because the event happens in the child component, all we want to do is address the data that comes out of that event that we're interested in when we're here in the parent component updating state. So we're going to say we just want the selected size to come into our handler. And we can log that here. Console.log. We'll say parent handle size change. I'm just pasting that in from when I had it copied previously. We'll add the selected size here. We'll add our comma after this function. Okay, so now we're passing handle size change in as a prop. This is a reference to this function. So now here in my size selector component, I don't have to change anything here so far. What I'm going to do here is call that handle size change function that came in as a prop. So I'm just going to execute it directly. props.handleSizeChange, and I'm going to pass in the value that I'm going to use to update my state later. So let's just stop here and see what we have so far. To recap, when the onChange event happens, we're calling onSizeChange, which is a callback function that's local to my size selector component. Inside there, we're pulling out the value from the event target, that is the currently selected size, and we're calling the handle size change function, which is defined in the parent and passed in as a prop. Then down here in the product customizer, we execute that function, which is expecting the selected size as its argument, and so far all we're doing is logging it here. So everything is saved. Let's switch back to the browser, open up our DevTools again, clear out the messages, and refresh. Now when I select a new size, we should see some more action. First, there's the log line that comes from inside the size selector, and then there's the one that comes from the parent. They both have the right value, so everything's working so far. Now we need to update the state with these new values. So I'm going to get rid of my log line because we don't need it here in onSizeChange anymore. And then here in handleSizeChange, we need to do the thing that we're interested in. So in this case, what we're expecting, switching back to the browser, is that when we update our size, we're going to change the available colors for that size. So first, we're going to get the available colors from our inventory object. And we have this by size object, which lets us query our inventory by size. And this will return the available colors for a given size of shoe. Now that we have this, we can update the colors state with that information. What we do not do is say this.state.colors equals available colors. We do not do this. You never change state directly. React has an API for managing state, and that is always what we use. That is this.setState. There are various ways you can call this. One of the simplest ones is just to pass in an object with just the portion of state that you want to update at the time. So in this case, we're going to update colors, and we're going to update it with the new available colors. This.state can be called with as many properties as you want to update at the time, just including the ones that need to be changed. It can also be called many times in the same function. So if I have a bunch more logic down here, and then I want to update a different piece of state, like say I wanted to update size down here, I could do that. Everything works fine. One thing to note about setState is that it is asynchronous. It usually fires very quickly, but it is not guaranteed to instantaneously update. So if, for example, I set the state here, and then I wanted to look at the available colors later, if I used this.state.colors, it is not guaranteed that at the point that this line executes, it will be updated to my available colors. So just keep that in mind. You can look at the way to update state in the React docs to see more on this if it becomes important to you. The main thing to know for now is that we just need to update the piece that we're interested in. So let's save this and go back to our browser, refresh, open the React tools. You can keep track of what's happening here with our available colors as we change these sizes. So if we change the size to 10, now we have only 3 items in here. Change it back to 7, we have 2. Change it to 8, and we have 5 colors available. So now we have event handlers firing, which means that React is actually reacting to things that we're doing. So at this point, you've seen how to implement a basic event handler. Depending on where the state lives, you may need to jump through a hoop or two to get things to work exactly how you need them to. But this is the general process. We have our callbacks, which are defined as props on our elements. And then we define those callbacks in as many places as we need to make sure that our state is able to be updated correctly, and then to pass those values around in a way that doesn't force our components to know too much about how each of the others is implemented.